Cannabis sativa. From this innocuous-looking plant comes the drug cannabis, also called marijuana, pot, dope, dak. It's a drug loved by New Zealanders. Recent studies put us amongst the world's top consumers, for adults and teenagers. High consumption in a country where people can be jailed for growing, supplying and even using it. Clearly something's not right. Is cannabis as harmful as we're led to believe? Can we justify banning it when we don't ban alcohol or tobacco? Is it time to make cannabis legal?
Cannabis should be legal!
There's nothing new about people calling for cannabis law reform. What is surprising is the range of people who've joined in. Experts and professionals who can't be written off as a bunch of potheads.
The laws are doing more harm. The laws are creating criminals. The laws make it cool. The laws make it a symbol for youth rebellion. The law is an ass.
Lawyer Tony Gregg's opinion of the cannabis laws is very different from when he was a senior sergeant on cannabis recovery raids.
Why are we persisting with this law that does not deter people? Why are we persisting with this law that only criminalises people? It is a no-brainer.
Well, it's totally hypocritical. You know, you have one set of laws and legislation for one drug, alcohol, and another set of laws and legislation for cannabis, which is far less harmful than alcohol.
Penalising, criminalising tens of thousands of people for possessing a drug which is less dangerous than a few cans of lager is not only morally wrong, but it makes financial no sense at all.
Professor David Nutt was the British government's chief drugs advisor, but in 2009 he was sacked for suggesting cannabis wasn't as dangerous as alcohol and tobacco.
You're not going to stop people using it. Criminalising people for using it is actually destructive to them, completely out of proportion to the degree of harm that it might cause, and is also very expensive. So why not try a new approach?
However, on the issue of legalising cannabis, there's one Kiwi voice that speaks loudest.
400,000 New Zealanders that are part of the cannabis culture. They want to know why you think it's okay to lock people in jail for a bloody joint.
Former electorate chairman for the National Party, Dr. Green has been campaigning for the last 11 years.
And then I remembered that our original purpose was to change the law and not go to jail for running the fanciest titty house in the country.
And he's not waiting for a change in cannabis laws to live like it's legal. For the past 2.5 years, Dr. Green's been flouting the law by running a cannabis club where people have been able to buy and use the drug freely. He wants to see them all over the country.
The purpose of this place is to show my fellow New Zealanders that you have absolutely nothing to fear from people that are part of the cannabis culture.
Located in West Auckland and open all hours, it's an unassuming den of iniquity. A disused warehouse turned into a sprawling playroom for adults. No secret handshakes and no hiding what's going on. Here club members could buy a joint and smoke it.
So people will choose a strain and we'll take it out and we'll offer it to them and they'll have a smell. That's $1 grand and that's $20.
Members have to be over 18 and their membership fees help pay the rent and power. Originally, members were afraid they'd be targeted by police, and so created DACTA nicknames to protect their identity. But the police campaign never happened, and now many use their DACTA names with pride, becoming DACTivists. Dr. Green's gone as far as adopting his by deed poll. Servings of mixed lollies. Hard to believe this is the venue for New Zealand's most brazen criminal activity.
Munchies. Everyone?
The directory. Well, for me, it's a place of where I can go and have a smoke,
and not feel that I'm going to be watching over my back for the police to come and, say, you're smoking herb or marijuana, cannabis. We're going to arrest you.
Markie is an artist and full-time carer for her elderly grandmother.
I don't feel like there's any threat going down to the dactory. We've got to live like it's legal, because otherwise if we don't step out and do it, we're going to be the same forever, and it's not going to work.
You're a new member? Good. You know the shape.
Stepping Out has seen Dr. Green charged with growing and selling cannabis, but the club has never been shut down by the authorities.
We've had police come through our door about 4 or 5 times since we've been open, and only on one of those occasions did they come rolling across the counter waving warrants.
The law at the heart of Dr. Green's fight is defined by the Misuse of Drugs Act. Introduced in 1975 to counter the drug culture that came out of the 60s, it classifies dried cannabis as a Class C drug, with penalties for cultivation, supply and use. The authorities of the day claimed the act would lead to a reduction in cannabis consumption.
Well, prohibition of cannabis clearly has not stopped people using it. In the past year, we're looking at around about 15% of the adult population will have used cannabis, and we're rated pretty high worldwide. We're one of the top 2 or 3 countries in terms of the prevalence of cannabis use.
Despite the risk of prosecution, it's estimated 400,000 New Zealanders smoke the drug every year.
Of these 400,000 people who are using cannabis, we know the ones, there's about 11,000 or something that get arrested every year, which is one of the highest arrest rates in the world, by the way. And those people are not generally your middle class people. It is the lower end of society that gets hit by the cannabis laws. It's not a just system. It's discriminatory against Maori and low income people.
The failings of our cannabis laws have been part of a wider review of the Misuse of Drugs Act by the Law Commission. In its recent report, it made a number of recommendations to revise cannabis legislation and enforcement, with the main aim of reducing the harms and costs that result from our current approach.
To use the old and outdated cliche of the war on drugs, a term that I do not like, we simply haven't won the war in any sense at all. And that, I think, indicates that we need to think about other ways of doing things, because the harms caused by drugs are very real.
Trouble is, the current drug regulation system is also causing harm. Take the case of Dawn, who is convicted of growing cannabis for supply and of supplying cannabis, charges she has always denied. However, Dawn did admit to growing and using cannabis to relieve the pain she suffered from arthritis in one hip. Conventional anti-inflammatory drugs weren't an option because they caused an adverse reaction. Dawn was sentenced to 1 year's home detention, 300 hours community work, and was under threat of losing her home. Sensationalist media coverage followed, and the whole experience had a massive impact.
As well as being unwell, I've had to deal with all of the fallout from police, courts, lawyers, corrections, and my life's just completely changed.
She lost a business as well. Now, 3 years on, Dawn is applying for cancellation of her $60,000 legal aid bill because she believes the case against her was flawed. Dawn is just one example of why many people believe our system has to change.
I feel very angry that the current cannabis laws have this perverse effect of denying access of medicinal cannabis to people who need it. I think it's cruel, it's unnecessary. I think it's probably one of the most reprehensible consequences of this criminalising cannabis users.
After the break, is cannabis the dangerous drug we're led to believe?